Here we go.
Welcome to another long-awaited edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of the epicreview.com, and I am the real Brad Bell, and joining me today, as always, is
Jerry Reed, also known as Barbecue 17.
So we're going to be kicking it old school today with Jerry and I just hosting the podcast. Gina, Kristen, and like always, Andrew and Evan, our other great contributors to this site, could not be here. I know it's been a while since our last broadcast. We've had a lot of stuff going on in our life, career changes, new jobs, babies on the way.
It's been busy.
So we apologize, but with the success of Resident Evil Week, thanks to all of you guys, we thought it was a great time to, do the painstaking job of putting out another podcast for our listeners. So, Jerry, let's get right back into it. What have you been checking out this week?
Well, obviously I'm still reeling from the aftermath of San Diego Comi-Con and some of the reveals that were there. My thoughts have been on all the, great toys that were revealed. So, certainly, I've been looking at and talking about the Masters of the Universe 2014 subscription that is on the way. I just posted today an article about it on the website regarding the brand manager, Scott Knightlick, also known as Toy Guru, has written about, all the challenges with the line this year and tried to answer some people's questions about why they're not subscribing. But I'm excited. I hope it goes through. It'll go through. It always goes through. I hope so because their Ghostbusters subscription did not last year. They canceled it.
But this is their biggest line. Not Mattel's biggest line, but at least biggest subscription
for Matty Collector.
Yes.
I definitely think it's the thing that keeps it going. So we will have to see.
What figures have they announced? The figures for this 2014?
So far, they've announced a few of the figures for 2014. They've explicitly announced and shown Glimmer, who was probably the second most prominent character on She-Ra, Princess of Power. She was in the original toy line. I guess maybe the second most prominent female, because Bo was a pretty prominent character. They've shown Too Bad, who was probably the last of Skeletor's original, main evil warriors. They've shown Hydron, who was one of the three main galactic protectors or galactic guardians from New Adventures. They've shown some other figures, Modulok, one of the last Horde figures that needs to be released, and they've hinted at a couple others like Blade from the 1987 movie and Scorpia from the Filmation.
So they're going to do some movie-based figures, huh?
They can do movie-based figures of three of the characters because they appeared in the original line. Blade, Saurod, and Gwildor all appeared in the original line, so they are able to do those figures as movie-based, but it sounds like they cannot do like a Dolph Lundgren He-Man. Now, you'll be interested. Have you heard about Standar?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Why am I interested?
Well, because it's based off of Stan Lee.
Really?
They have Stan Lee's, is it called Kamikaze, that's coming up?
Yeah, that's Stan Lee's Comic-Con, his own Comic-Con in L.A. called Kamikaze. So because Stan Lee has Kamikaze, he's getting his own figure? Explain this to me.
Well, it sounds like with Kamikaze, obviously being a Stan Lee-centered convention, one of the things that anybody who's bringing an exclusive is trying to make it Stan Lee-based. And so Mattel was invited to participate, even though Mattel has the DC license. I mean, Stan Lee has his own, sort of company now. Is it BAM Entertainment? So Mattel was invited, and they, could pick anything they wanted to do as an exclusive, and so they've decided to turn Stan Lee into a Masters of the Universe Classics character. Obviously, he's not, being officially inserted into the Masters of the Universe Classics canon or anything, but it's just a neat figure. I mean, it looks pretty decent. Obviously, the head is a little bit caricatured, and it looks like Stan Lee. it has glasses that are removable, so it looks a little silly with the glasses, but the body and the headgear that he's wearing looks really cool. I think it would be a decent character. It's going to be offered at the Comi-Con, and then if there's some left over, it'll be available on MattyCollector.com. Not part of the subscription. You know, some people really hate when Mattel does stuff like this that kind of brings other brands into Masters of the Universe. But it doesn't sound like it's taking up the place of any other figure, and just something fun that they were trying to do.
And there's been so much stuff that's came out of San Diego Comic-Con that
oh my gosh,
it's going to carry over from what we've been checking out to Epic News, which we're going to save some of the film-based stuff for Epic News. But my favorite thing that I saw on a smaller scale was the TMNT classic figures. They're doing movie versions now.
Yes.
So you and I are both a big fan of that line. You have all 4 of the Turtles, as do I. And I just pre-ordered Bebop and Rocksteady on Big Bad Toy Store. That pre-order sold out in like 30 minutes. But it took me back to my childhood, because when you had those movie-based Turtles from when you were a kid, wow, weren't they unique and something really different?
They were. I mean, they had the different texture to them and the different look to them, and they look
very rubbery.
And they're still really popular, and they're really expensive these days. I actually never had them as a kid. I found one of them sometime last year in like a bargain bin at a comic shop. He was loose. He didn't have any accessories with him.
Wasn't it Michelangelo?
I think it's Michelangelo or Leonardo I found. But I'm excited. I think those are really cool, and
I wonder if they're going to have the same texture. I guess they'll probably be more plasticky, joint-based.
Yeah, but they look like they'll be textured and not, the smooth body like the last Classics figures had.
This is just a line that they have me hooked. I want to get everything of this, because I want to have those figures that I had as a kid in a more kind of a adult collectible version of that.
Well, and I think you say something that sounds like what a lot of people are saying. I mean, Playmates really seems like they've struck gold with the Turtles line. And it just feels like Playmates never understands how to market things to collectors. I mean, that line has been out and has been popular since last year, and we haven't even seen a wave 2 yet. I mean, we know Bebop Rocksteady are coming, but they haven't been released yet. And it doesn't sound like they have massive plans for this line, whereas I would think another company that understood collectors more would have jumped on this immediately and said, hey, we've got, all these figures planned, and we're going to do 4 waves a year.
Like Hasbro,
like
Star Wars
Hasbro,
Black.
Or, Mattel probably would have jumped on that, or, NECA, or some other company. From what I have heard, I haven't watched it, but I've heard Playmates did a Comic-Con presentation. They did a panel like most toy companies do. And I've heard a lot of people that were there said it really felt like Playmates truly did not understand how to connect with collectors. That, a lot of the stuff they showed was product that was already in stores. That they almost treated it like a marketing conference.
Like an advertisement rather than a preview show.
They might do at, New York Toy Fair for buyers or something. So it looks great. It looks like they're doing some really cool stuff. They're also re-releasing.
Yes, all the original figures with the original packaging, which they did this a few years back with the 25th anniversary of the Ninja Turtles cartoon. What do you think about that?
There's a couple characters that I would probably pick up that I don't have the original figures of. But
do you keep these in the box?
I wouldn't, but
I know you wouldn't. You keep nothing in the box, and I've started to open more of my stuff. He's been a bad influence on me, but I think you should enjoy your toys. But I have luckily I have all my Ninja Turtles figures from when I was a kid. Now they're missing the belts, they're missing the weapons. A couple of them have them. But I don't know if I want. Those are mine. Those are my turtles. They may not be perfect. They may have bite marks on them.
Bite marks.
But they're something sentimental.
Did you bite your turtles?
I think I might have. Somebody did. It was Mondo the.
Mondo Gecko.
Yeah, exactly.
Was biting turtles.
Mondo Gecko or Leatherhead. So, but I don't know if I want to just rebuy these to have a pristine version. I don't really see the point. I mean, I guess it's like you said, if you missed out on a certain figure, maybe pick it up.
If I hadn't rebought the originals, but one thing too is that the originals can be rebought some of them pretty inexpensively.
In the package, like a Foot Soldier or April, you can get those at maybe $30 price range. Now, if you were looking for the Turtles in the box,
really expensive.
Woo!
But if you wanted to collect them loose and complete, I mean, you can get most of the figures for a pretty decent price. Now, it'd be interesting if they released some of the rarer Turtles.
Yes.
Like Scratch the Cat is one of the
What's the Panda one that they...
Panda Con.
Yeah, he's very rare.
It'd be interesting to see some of those re-released. But I think Scratch the Cat is considered like the rarest TMNT figure from the original line.
Maybe they shouldn't reproduce him. Just keep that figure sacred.
I think a lot of people would like to add one to their collection. I'm not sure what the market is to do exact representation. I think the reason people like stuff like Masters of the Universe Classics, Star Wars Black, G.I. Joe 25th Anniversary, Turtles Classics, Power Ranger Legacy is it's what you remember.
You bring that up.
But it's bigger and better.
Yes, you bring up Power Rangers Legacy. It is what you remember. It's bigger and better. And you and I had this conversation. Probably my holy grail of toys that I always wanted to own was the original Dragon Dagger.
Yes.
Which I got a pretty neat story if anybody wants to hear it.
I want to hear it.
Okay, so I was lucky enough to find one on eBay, mint condition, worked, had the back, had never been opened, mint in box for $80 on eBay. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was searching eBay every couple months for this, so I got it. And you got to understand, this is what I asked my parents for every year for Christmas. This is the toy that made me really start to doubt Santa Claus because I would never get it. I ask and ask.
2002, Brad asked his parents for Christmas for a Dragon Dagger.
It was way before 2002. It was like 93, 94, 95, 96, all the way up into the early 2000s.
Christmas 2008, Brad asked his parents for a Dragon Dagger.
Yes, as I'm in my 20s, I continue to ask. That's the trend Jerry's going for. But my mom told me she saw one time at KB Toys, and you know how KB used to always overprice everything. A
lot higher than everybody else, yeah.
And she couldn't afford it at the time, and my brother and I, we had to have the same. She had to buy two of everything. One was not going to be enough. So I never was fortunate enough to get one, found one. So what I did was, at my parents' house on Christmas morning, wrapped it up in a unique wrapping paper, put from Santa to Brad, hid it at the back of the tree on Christmas night, woke up, and I was like, oh my God, look what Santa brought me. So I don't know if this is an entertaining or a pathetic story, but it's a cool toy collector story.
And you told no one else that you had done that either. And
no one knew.
We're acting like, okay, who gave this to me? And so,
it was very much like I don't know if we have any listeners who used to watch Family Matters, but when Carl got the space helmet that he had asked for that Santa actually gave him on that show, it was very close to that. But yeah, that was my parents. You should have saw the look on their face because they still know to this day how bad I wanted that toy. Which brings us to Power Rangers Legacy. They're doing the Legacy version of not only the Dragon Zord, but the Dragon Dagger.
Oh, they're doing the Dragon Zord too.
Yeah, they're doing the Dragon. Now, I had the Dragon Zord, and it came with the Green Ranger figure.
So will the Dragon Zord connect together with the Legacy Megazord?
That's the question. We have no idea.
I would like to know that because I just bought the Legacy Megazord.
And then they'd have to do Legacy Titanus, so you can have Legacy Ultra Zord. But back to the Dragon Dagger, the holy grail of Power Rangers toys. So it's this great metal version they're going to be releasing, and Jerry calls me. He's like, "Are you going to get it?" I'm like, "I don't know," because I don't know. For me, it was about the hunt to find that figure and kind of fulfill a childhood dream, rather than having a bigger, better version of that figure. I kind of want that in forms of other things, like Hot Toys, bigger, better versions of figures I can collect, which truly are adult collectibles. I don't really want to, go back and have the same things from my childhood like the exact same thing, just a shinier version. Now the turtles are a little bit bigger. There's something a little different.
Yeah, they're bigger. I mean, they have some elements that the weapons have, the colors on them, and the belts are more similar to the cartoon design. So,
the facial features.
Sure, the articulation is different. I mean, like I said, they're a bigger, better version. It's like the Masters of the Universe Classics figures. I mean, they have a lot of the design features. Some of them look, design-wise, they have the same aspects as the original figures, but they're larger. They're more well-articulated. They come with more detailed accessories. It's kind of like maybe how you envisioned it as a child.
Yes, exactly. It's just this huge, grand thing sitting on a toy shelf. And then you look at them when you're 25, 26 years old, and it's, they're still special to you because you loved them so much as a kid, but they're not as grandiose as you would have remembered. But these are, like you said, that vision you have in your head.
Yeah, I mean, they get, once again, they give you that oomph that you had, as a kid. I mean,
that's a good way to put it, Jerry. Yeah, that oomph.
Oomph. I mean, like the original Masters figures were chunky. They were chunkier than a lot of other toys at the time. The Classics figures are between, they're definitely around 7 inches, so they're larger than a lot of other figures. And you hold it in your hand again, you're like, wow, this feels kind of large and chunky. Just like I remember, even though it's been augmented, but we're adults buying toys, so we're different too than we were as children buying toys.
And most of our hands are fatter and chunkier too, so we definitely need bigger toys to compensate for that growth, right?
That's correct.
All right, so I'm going to move in something else that I was checking out this week. I finally got a chance to see the film The Raid Redemption, directed by Gareth Evans. This came out in 2011 overseas, and it was released in March of 2012 here in the States. And it's an Indonesian film. It's a very simple premise. A crime lord controls this skyscraper, not a skyscraper, but a large apartment complex where he harbors the city's criminals. And he's seen to be untouchable. And basically the premise of the movie is these guys got to go in and take this guy out. Okay, so that sounds like, okay, if it was an American movie, whatever. Well, they've went back. They've dubbed this movie in English. So there's always that, which can kind of, mess with the movie, especially when it's a intricate plot. Fortunately for us, this is just these guys going in to take this crime lord out. And it is awesome. Non-stop martial arts, violent. I got the unrated edition, so obviously that added to the violence. I mean, just some of the best fight scenes I've seen in a movie in years and years and years. And it's just, it was breathtaking. It was shot beautifully. The music is done by Linkin Park's Mike Shinoda, which is matches very well with the beats of the action and stuff like that. And it's a movie that the Dredd remake, the Judge Dredd remake starring Carl Urban, pretty much ripped off.
When you were telling me about that, that's what it made me think about.
So, do yourself a favor. If you're choosing between Dredd and The Raid Redemption, watch The Raid Redemption. And the martial arts in this movie, all the stunts are performed by the actors, and it is simply phenomenal. And what's so interesting is Michael Bay, when describing how the new Ninja Turtles movie was going to be coming out next summer, he said, they're really emphasizing on the ninja part. He said, these turtles are going to be like, our fight scenes are going to be like the fight scenes in The Raid Redemption. And I'm sitting here watching that, and I'm saying, if I see Ninja Turtles fight like this, I don't know, I may just erupt with joy because, it would truly be the adult, gritty. It looks like it's going to be an adult, grittier version of the Turtles anyway, this new Michael Bay produced film, hopefully. And if they had the action to go along with this, maybe this thing could work after all. But, of course, that's Michael Bay. He's probably hyping his property up. But, Jerry, definitely check out The Raid Redemption.
I plan on watching it after hearing you talk about it the other day. It definitely sounds really good.
I would confirm it probably a great. The only reason I don't give it an epic is I think if I was watching it in its native language and spoke that language and understand it, I would have gave it an epic. But there are probably there's 2 plot twists in the film, and one is kind of, it's a little messy, but I think it's with the language barrier when they went back and dubbed it. It's nothing like wrong with the film itself. Mm-hmm. So, Jerry, is there anything else you've been checking out this week?
No.
Nothing else?
No. I just want to comment on The Conjuring. We're not going to review the whole movie.
Yes.
But we saw it a week ago. I have still been trying to track down a copy of Insidious.
Which is directed by James
Mangold, who also directed The Conjuring.
Who is directing the next Fast and the Furious movie.
I really want to see Insidious, but Conjuring was one of the most fantastic horror movies that I have seen in some time. It is not a splatter film, it's not zombies or monsters. It is it's much more of a possession / haunted house film that really reminded me of something more like the original Amityville Horror, the 70s version, or Poltergeist, a less extreme version of The Exorcist in ways, but it was just really good. It was really well done. It was really creepy, and I can actually say that after watching the movie that night, I came home, I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And I'm laying in bed, and, my wife was asleep, and the dogs are laying there, and then I started thinking about the movie. I'm like, man, that actually was pretty creepy. And I woke up, I can kind of like wake up for a brief minute, and then just go right back to sleep, because I'll do that in the night. One of the dogs will be scratching at something, and I'll wake up and, let him out or let him in, fall right back to sleep. I woke up to use the restroom, which is right, walked right in the bathroom, opened the door, and I'm like half asleep, half awake, and thought I saw the witch from the movie, and I screamed. And my wife's like, what is it? And I'm like, it's the curtains in the bathroom. And she's like, we've always had curtains in the bathroom. I'm like, yep, I was half asleep, half awake.
I love The Conjuring. It's one of my favorite. It may end up making my top 5 favorites of the summer.
Yeah.
It just does everything so well within the rules of the classic horror genre.
Yes.
It doesn't do anything groundbreaking. It doesn't do anything to kind of turn the genre or deconstruct the genre the way that Cabin in the Woods did.
Sure.
But it does everything so sound and so perfect. It just makes for this well-rounded and kind of intimate horror experience that really takes you back to those movies that used to scare the hell out of you when you were a kid.
Just genuine atmosphere.
Yes.
And with
shot beautifully.
Yeah, with solid acting and a solid script. We've seen, Evil Dead this year was a movie that, pushed the boundaries on the gore and violence and intensity. We've seen tons of movies push the boundaries up beyond, good taste or showing things that we never thought, we didn't think we would see or didn't really want to see in movies. We've seen movies push all kinds of boundaries. This one truly just takes all those pieces and just puts them together so well.
And Patrick Wilson in this movie is phenomenal as Ed Warren. This guy, I wrote in my review, he is one of the most underrated actors in Hollywood. Everything I've seen him in, Jerry, and I think you like Patrick Wilson.
I do.
He's phenomenal in everything. And I know you hadn't seen Insidious. He's phenomenal in it.
Yeah.
He was awesome as Night Owl. He was in a movie with Samuel L. Jackson. I believe it was called Lakeview Terrace, where Samuel L. Jackson
Lakeview Terrace,
was his crazy neighbor.
I haven't seen that.
And I hadn't seen everything Patrick Wilson has done, but everything he is in, he is so solid. He's like Idris Elba, who is the guy from Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
He is kind of known as he was known for a while as the most underrated actor in Hollywood, and people are kind of realizing how big of a star this guy can be. He was pretty big in a big blockbuster in Pacific Rim.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think Patrick Wilson's kind of that next guy to kind of take that next step. Now, will he ever be Leonardo DiCaprio or someone like that? No. But can he carry a movie? Could he carry a franchise? I think he could.
He reminds me of one of those actors, like Gary Oldman.
Well, the dogs see that ghost that Jerry saw in the bathroom.
They see it too, and they're barking at it.
They've conjured up something.
He reminds me of like a Gary Oldman in a sense. That Gary Oldman's one of those actors that he blends so much into the role that he's doing. I mean, he really truly becomes the role that you often forget that, oh yeah, Gary Oldman was in all those movies. And I think Patrick Wilson is the same way. And Vera Farmiga, who plays Lorraine Warren, the actual couple that did do all these investigations, they were one of the best on-screen couples I have ever seen.
So real.
So real, just so much chemistry there, and just the way that they interacted with each other. I mean, you really got the idea. These were two very unique people who just spoke each other's language. And
they were a match made in hell.
Yeah.
That's what they were.
Well, I mean, I think that...
Or heaven.
Yeah.
Very much religious aspects in this film. It's not bombarded with them, but they're there. And she says several times to Ed, she's like, this is why God brought us together.
Yeah.
And you felt that. They portrayed that.
They really feel that they have a calling or this...
purpose, a greater
in their
purpose.
Life that they're supposed to help these families who are ravaged by, demonic entities. So... Conjuring was fantastic.
And so many times in kind of exorcism or possession movies, directors and writers get carried away with the demon, getting the demon out, and how much can we freak everybody out. And I love all those things in exorcism movies. But this focused on, instead of how can we, up the ante in the exorcism department, it was so character-driven, and how can we help this family?
Yes.
And you really felt Ed and Lorraine's need and calling to really legitimately want to help this family.
Yeah.
And like I said, it made for kind of an intimate
very
horror
much,
film.
Brad, you know that I'm much to Evan's dismay. I love splat-stick movies. I love movies like Evil Dead or Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunter or, Dead Alive, where people are just, you have people just fighting monsters and getting hacked apart and dying in brutal ways. Usually pretty entertaining. But one of the downsides that's come out of that, especially from slasher movies, is that characters are expendable in those type of movies.
Yes.
I mean, you don't really care about characters. And this movie truly made you feel for the family.
And when the possession, the main possession, we're not going to spoil it, but of this film takes place, you're like, oh my God, I hope they can solve this. I hope they can get this demon out. And it is just, and it doesn't bombard you with scares, but everything is paced and timed to near perfection. And the only reason I reviewed this film for us, and I gave it a grade and a half, the only thing that kept me from giving it epic was it really didn't do anything groundbreaking. It did everything darn near perfect, but it wasn't something that we hadn't seen before. But it was a very sound horror film. What would you have gave it an epic, Jerry?
I definitely would have went with a grade or grade and a half. I mean, I agree with exactly what you said, that it was like a really good pizza. I mean, it still took, pepperoni and cheese and green peppers and onions, all those ingredients that you would usually have on a pizza. They just put them together in a perfect way to make a really good pizza. They didn't throw anything, off the wall on the pizza that you'd never had before, but they put everything traditional together so well that it made a darn fine pizza.
Exactly. And it's something I'll definitely want to own on Blu-ray for sure. Okay, I want to say one more thing I've been checking out.
All right.
And this was a recommendation, a long-time recommendation for one of our great contributors, James Evan Truelove, who writes for the site from time to time. It is Robert De Niro's... it was honestly maybe my favorite De Niro film, kind of tipping my hand to what I thought of the movie.
Above The Godfather 2.
Yes, it is Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. And I've Andrew Stokes he loves Goodfellas, and he loves Godfather, and he loves these kind of Italian gangster movies. And like, while I respect those films, I think they are all great films. I really like the first two Godfathers, but it's just not my cup of tea. The mafia movie, the gangster movie, it's not something that I love. I know that most men, it's kind of a manly guy thing to love those movies, but I just never have really fallen in love with them the way that some people have. So, and same thing with Scorsese films. Of course, a lot of his films are those type of films, but I respect the hell out of Martin Scorsese, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. And I can respect his movies, but at the same time, they're just not like, he's not my favorite filmmaker.
They're not necessarily the kind of movies that you enjoy.
Exactly. Well, and Taxi Driver, so going in, I kind of had this preconceived notion, this is going to be a Goodfellas type movie that I'm probably not going to exactly love, but I definitely wanted to see it. And Best Buy had the collector's edition where they had went and restored this. A beautiful restoration job for $10, and it comes with these collectible prints, and it was just a very nice. I was like, I can't turn that down for $10. And of course, I watched the film, and just definitely my favorite De Niro role, probably my favorite Scorsese film, even over The Departed, which is his Best Picture winner. And of course, just, so many classic De Niro shots and lines like, "You looking at me?
Yeah.
You looking at me?" And the film has had such historical context as it was the inspiration for John Hinckley Jr., who tried to assassinate President Reagan. Of course,
and wrote all those letters. Didn't he write a bunch of letters to like young Jodie Foster or something?
Yeah,
too?
he did.
Yeah.
And of course, in the film, I'm a spoiler for a movie that was made in 1976. He doesn't kill the presidential candidate in the movie, but instead his life takes a different turn. It's a very gritty vigilante movie. Yeah. The taxi driver, Robert De Niro, becomes a vigilante, and it's just so many great performances, like a 13-year-old Jodie Foster playing a prostitute. It was kind of her first big role, and there's some other good performances in there as well. But it's one of, and this had a lot to do with the restoration that they did. But honestly, all of Scorsese's movies are beautifully shot, and I'm a sucker. You will hear me say so many times, "Oh, that was beautifully shot."
Yeah, you're a sucker for cinematography.
I am, and there's not many beautifully shot films anymore. I mean, Skyfall was for sure, yeah. Django was, but this, just to be made then, and just to see the restoration job they did, I highly recommend this Blu-ray. And it's probably my favorite Martin Scorsese film, and I would probably go a grade and a half, probably epic on it. Mm-hmm. I know it's one of the greatest films of all. Have you ever seen?
Yeah, I own it over there.
So, you own it? So.
It's a great movie. Have you seen Raging Bull?
No, I want to see that. It's on my list.
Okay,
I'm getting to these.
It's an interesting movie. My wife hated it. Hated Raging Bull. It is a very different movie, but it's a really good.
It's on my list. I must watch it.
Okay.
But so do you prefer the Godfathers over Taxi Driver?
Yeah,
Godfather Part 2?
I'm a big Godfather. I actually like the original Godfather as my.
That's my favorite one as well.
I prefer it to Godfather Part 2. Not saying it's necessarily a better movie. I just enjoy it more.
I enjoyed the first one. I think the second one is this kind of complete masterpiece of film.
But you put them both together. I mean, it's definitely one of those things that they make like a big complete story.
And then you can skip the third one, so that's the good thing. Okay, let's go ahead and get into epic news.
Epic news.
And it is very epic this week. And I'm going to lead off with probably the smaller of the news, which I can't believe this is the smaller of the news. Avengers 2, Jerry. It has been revealed that it will be entitled Avengers Age of Ultron. It's not going to deal with Thanos. Apparently, he'll appear in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie and probably have a final showdown whenever Avengers 3 rolls around. But it's looking like, from what they teased at San Diego Comi-Con, how they made this reveal was, on the screen was Iron Man's helmet. It's crushed. And all of a sudden, it transformed into an Ultron helmet. and then it's Avengers, Age of Ultron. And Joss Whedon has went on record to say Hank Pym, Ant-Man, will not create Ultron. It's looking, from everything we've heard, Tony Stark will create Ultron.
Interesting.
And this name is from a comic that we've actually mentioned on previous shows that actually ended up as a pretty big and decent line-wide crossover for Marvel this past year, written by Brian Michael Bendis, with art by Brian Hitch, and it's not gonna be, it's gonna be on the scale of that comic, but it's just the name alone.
Yeah.
So Jerry, what is your reaction to Ultron? It surprised the heck out of me.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the wise aspect of connecting it with something that Marvel's really pushing at the time. But Ultron is, I mean, once again, it's a really good chance to use a prominent Marvel villain who is really powerful, who has a intimate connection to the Avengers, and it's somebody who's not supernatural or magical. We had Loki from the first movie. You know, he's magical, like a magical, otherworld creature. You have Thanos, who is a cosmic villain. This is a really good chance to do somebody who's kind of a homegrown Avengers villain, especially if they use any element of the story that his creation is due to the Avengers.
And, which I'm pretty sure they will. And the Ultron's pretty much, he's Terminator. He was, I mean, I love the Terminator movies and everything, but he was Terminator before there was a Terminator. To see this Avengers team deal with that, as like you said, it's going to be created from one of their own, is going to be unique. I just want to comment on Hank Pym not creating Ant-Man. I know this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not the Marvel Comic Universe, which I respect. They really haven't had a misstep yet. However, you have the Ant-Man movie coming out the November after Avengers 2 comes out. And Ant-Man's, from what Joss Whedon has said, won't appear in Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. So that's just stripping, everybody cares already about Tony Stark, the Hulk, Iron Man, Thor. It is Hank Pym's defining thing to create Ultron. That is the thing that really makes him stick out in the Marvel Universe. And my question is, do you really take a lot away from that character when you give it to Iron Man? Doesn't this guy have enough already?
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. It does rob Hank Pym of something defining. I mean, granted, Hank Pym was around a long time before Ultron.
Yes.
But
he was the reason the Avengers were able to defeat Loki in issue number 1.
So that's true. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with the Ant-Man movie, how they choose to define and make Hank Pym, stand out as unique.
Because I maybe saw Ultron maybe in Avengers 3 post Ant-Man movie. Now, at first I was kind of sour on this, and I was kind of sour on the idea of Tony Stark creating Ultron, but I got to think about it. Does this make a lot of sense in and of the context of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Think about it. This is really gonna humble Tony Stark, the billionaire, genius, playboy. He is really not messed up to this point. He's had his flaws, but he always ends up saving the day. And I think it's gonna be. I thought Iron Man 3 really dug deep into that character. Not as much as I would have liked to, but it dug deeper than anything we had seen before that. And I think we've been digging deeper and deeper into this character since he launched the missile into space at the end of the Avengers movie, into the wormhole. But I think to see this guy humbled by one of his creations not helping humanity, but maybe potentially destroying it, and to see Robert Downey Jr. have to go through that and act that, I think it's going to be a sight to behold, and it could be something new.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely adds a lot to it because it makes sense, especially after Iron Man 3, would Tony Stark start moving towards trying to create... He had the remote-controlled suits in 3, so would he start trying to create, AI...
I'm getting goosebumps.
That handled it, that dealt with it himself, so he didn't need to be... he could just be Tony Stark and create these things. And you're right, it's a very interesting thing, and it goes back and deals with the whole issue from the original Iron Man movie of him wanting to abandon these projects of destruction and inadvertently creating something. And what about if they eventually get to a point where, his creation destroys him?
Exactly, because he's only going to be in Avengers 2 and Avengers 3, so at least that's what we're told. It's just, this Ultron may be the perfect, because you're like, he's pretty much given up being Iron Man, or he doesn't need to be Iron Man at the end of Iron Man 3. I guess this is, you create Ultron, you kind of have to be Iron Man again, right? So it's the perfect catalyst to drive Tony Stark back into the armor, don't you think?
I agree.
So
make it very personal for him.
It will, and I think that's going to be, I hate to see the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe become a character study of Tony Stark, but I'm not complaining. Yeah. Those movies make them boatloads of money. They're entertaining, whether you agree or disagree.
They certainly can do a lot of other things with other characters,
Speaking of other things with other characters, they asked Joss Whedon what he was having the most fun doing with Avengers 2, with Avengers Age of Ultron now. And he said it's writing Hawkeye. Writing Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye. He said this movie is going to have Hawkeye in the spotlight so much. Which Hawkeye is in the spotlight in a lot of Ultron stories.
Yeah.
But, after we saw Jeremy Renner kind of brainwashed for the majority of the Avengers, now he's going to be a prominent player as a member of this team. And I think that would be fun to watch play out through the course of this movie. So let's move on to news, the most epic news maybe of the year for us. This kind of came out of nowhere, making it even more epic and even more larger than life, it seemed like. But Zack Snyder took the Hall H at Comic-Con, and he had one of the actors from Man of Steel come up, very deep voice, did a great job. And Zach was saying, I'm trying to describe the project. And I posted this video on the Facebook page, but I really can't do it justice. He said, just let's let this quote sink in. And it was the quote from Dark Knight Returns where Batman tells Superman, I want you to remember my hand at your throat. I want you to remember the one man who beat you. And, of course, half the audience is kind of erupting because they recognize, oh, my God, this is going to Batman. Superman, I guess it doesn't process with everybody. So after he finishes reading this quote, the room goes dark. Then the Man of Steel logo comes up, the Superman logo. Then all of a sudden you see the bat wings, the bat symbol come up behind it. And you want to talk about one of the biggest pops in the history of San Diego Comic-Con, Jerry. That place went crazy. So what I have my thoughts on this, and I've been thinking about this a lot, but let's hear your initial thoughts on this Batman Superman film.
My initial thoughts are obviously that I'm ecstatic. I am excited to know that there's a Batman movie scheduled again for theaters, and that's a really, really good feeling to have. To know that there's another Batman movie coming out. So I'm really excited. I'm interested to see what direction they go in, because reading that quote makes it sound like they're gonna be enemies.
I think they, from what I've read initially, they will be, and then come together for the greater good.
Which would be a perfectly good way
to lead us into a Justice League movie down the road.
Some hesitations that I have, and I'll definitely call them hesitations because some people are already talking about how DC's dooming themselves, and this movie already is no good. Which, once again, I love a lot of critics, that judge the movie based on it was announced at Comic-Con.
I wish it was announced at HeroCon.
I know, right? Because I would have been there. I do think that with this announcement and with the way that it was announced the movies would roll out, because it's...
Well, this was the one that was officially announced, and then all around that Hall H panel, the rumor was that we'll have Flash in 2016, and Justice League finally come 2017.
But that's not been officially
announced.
One of the things that this makes me consider is that DC and Warner really are not trying to break new ground in getting closer to a Justice League movie. There's a step. There's a step that you're putting Superman and Batman together. But what Marvel did was take lots of different characters and build them up. Not just two characters that were already really heavily established. We know that Batman can carry a movie.
Superman, too.
And we know that Superman can carry a movie. So rather than combine Superman and suddenly, do something Superman-related that says, here's moving the Flash in, or here's moving Wonder Woman, or here's moving Aquaman, or Cyborg, or somebody else, it automatically goes to Batman, another character who can support a movie on his own.
A built-in audience.
Yeah,
a huge built-in fan base, because Batman transcends comic books.
Yes, which is great. I'm excited for a Batman-Superman movie. But the question is, how does that really get... obviously they could have some cameos in the movie, and I hope they do. But how does having Batman and Superman together really start breaching that barrier that DC has that none of their other characters they ever seem to be able to do anything with?
Yeah, it's like, we know they can make a good Batman movie. We know they can make a good Superman movie. I'm pretty sure you put them both together, it's going to be huge. Yeah. But what's going to happen after that? My biggest concern with this movie is, and Jerry, I'll be fascinated to get your opinion. Okay, so Christopher Nolan produced the Superman movie. Zack Snyder directed it. It's a Zack Snyder directed movie. I know that, okay? I'm not trying to denounce that fact. However, there's no doubt, just from a tonal standpoint, the stamp that Christopher Nolan had on this Superman movie, it was the Superman version of Batman Begins. I've heard several critics say that on several podcasts I listen to and on several reviews that I have read. Rather than create you will believe a man can fly type Superman movie, a fantastical Superman movie, Man of Steel dealt with how would humanity react to first contact with the alien being in a very kind of as realistic as a Superman movie can be, right?
And still be a Superman movie.
Exactly. So you have this tone established, very similar to the tone of the Nolan Batman movies. Obviously, Batman and Superman are different characters. Batman is just more realistic in nature. So my problem is we're going to have pretty much Christopher Nolan's version of Superman with Batman, but it's not going to be the Christopher Nolan version of Batman. I'm not saying I want the Christopher Nolan version of Batman. I'm just saying, do we really need to see a different actor come in and be Nolan Batman 2.0?
Well, and you bring up a really interesting point. That you're right. Superman really based its tone off of the Nolan Batman films. And then we're saying those movies are part of a different universe. They stand alone, and Superman is the beginning of something new. I personally think that why that's happening, obviously Christopher Nolan is involved with them, but I think DC is just having a hard time finding the tone that they want for their movies that makes them successful. And it sounds like going off of what worked for the Batman movies is what they're seeing as makes a successful movie.
Which is fine to me if you can somehow, some way get Christian Bale to come back, which is not likely. Or if you want to go the whole John Blake outlet with JGL.
Yeah. I don't want them to try to weave those movies into
And I agree
the
with
DC
you.
Cinematic
I
Universe.
agree with you. I kind of want that trilogy to stand on its own, and it does very well. However, you and I have talked about this. We were kind of hoping the next iteration of Batman would be not a campy Joel Schumacher type film, but a more fantastical type of Batman, where we can have a Mr. Freeze, a Man-Bat, a Clayface, right? Yeah. And I feel like this will not be that Batman. This will be a different actor playing Nolan Batman.
And who knows? I mean, who knows what, if there'll be any kind of a tonal shift between
Man of Steel and this movie?
Between Man of Steel and this movie. I mean, there certainly could be.
Why, though? Because I thought Man of Steel, as much as people hated it, it worked. It's made almost $700 million.
Without having to... I mean, Man of Steel has already introduced tons of fantastical elements into their universe. I mean, you've got...
Well, Superman.
Sure, you've got people from other worlds now. So you kind of...
But it felt like, what if people from other worlds came to the real world? Like, it felt as real as an alien movie could be. Which I love. That's what I love about Man of Steel.
I mean... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess they could try to make the villains in the next Superman Batman as real as, if we have a person that uses ice powers or...
But Christopher Nolan already did this to perfection, so why are we mining this same territory? Who knows, we may not be. Hypothetical situation.
I don't think that's going to be as big of a restriction. And I don't feel like Superman Returns is as...
Superman Returns.
Oh, God.
Man of Steel. Don't bring up that.
No. I don't feel that Man of Steel is as restrictive, that universe is as restrictive as...
the Nolan Batman.
As the Nolan Batman universe is.
But it is kind of restrictive, in a way.
I mean, we haven't seen anything yet. It'd be like saying that with Iron Man. I mean, what happened fantastical in the original Iron Man?
I mean,
nothing. There were no
Much,
aliens.
yeah.
There was no magic. There was nothing. But then you start having Thor, and you start having Captain America, and suddenly these things get brought in, and it all works for Avengers.
It all meshes together. So, yeah, I'm not saying it cannot work, and I'm hoping it works.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying the thing is, when they announced Man of Steel 2 has become Batman and Superman, right? So there's not going to be a standalone Superman movie as a sequel to Man of Steel, at least not anytime in the near future. Now, everything we heard, Warner's released a press release saying that, all right, guys, we got the same team back for Man of Steel 2 that we had for Man of Steel. We have a Christopher Nolan producing, David Goyer writing, and Zack Snyder directing. Does this change the dynamic now that Batman's in a movie? Does Christopher Nolan really want to do Batman? He said he's done with that character.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting.
He certainly can change his mind. I mean, there's no reason he can't too. It might give him a chance to work with a more fantastical version of Batman that, he didn't want to handle in the last, in the 3 film series.
I think he didn't want that. I think that he was against that. I think he wanted to make this guy as real as possible, which is the beauty of those films.
But picking up Superman, he obviously realized there was some fantastical element there by jumping on board with Superman.
And Chris Nolan's admitted he's a Superman fan when he was growing up. His brother, Jonathan, was the Batman fan. So they were both Batman and Superman fans, but he was a Superman preference. Speaking of Superman preference, you and I are both huge. Batgirl's your favorite superhero.
No, Batman's my favorite.
Okay,
Batgirl's my second favorite.
Okay, well, Batman is both of our favorite heroes. We have this huge love for the Caped Crusader, right? So I kind of want to look at this through a different lens real quick. Let's look at it from somebody who is a Superman fan first. And they are out there. Believe it or not.
They're out there somewhere crawling around under those rocks.
I'm kind of ticked if I'm not the Batman fan that I am. It's like, all right, we just saw 3 huge Batman movies that made billions of dollars, and finally I get my Superman movie that I want to see, and guess what? We're pigeonholing Batman in there for the sequel. We're not getting a Man of Steel sequel.
I tend to feel
Superman sequel.
and I'm sure. I mean, I know there's people that would prove this wrong, but I have often tended to feel that people that this is very general. This is very much generalizing, and I think I said this on the Superman podcast. There are definitely people who like Superman. But I often feel that people who like Superman in the same way that people like Mickey Mouse, or people like Betty Boop, or people like Tinkerbell. They really don't care what that character does story-wise. There's just some aspect of the character that appeals to them. I mean, I know people that everything they have is like, Betty Boop or Tinkerbell or Mickey Mouse, and you're like, hey, what's a great story? What's something that character does that you really like? And I mean, there's no story element there.
This is very much generalizing.
I think it is. I mean, there's definitely Superman fans that probably really like Superman, but I think there's a lot of people that Superman is like, oh, he's really cool. And I like to have the Superman logo on my car and on a t-shirt and a tattoo, but they don't necessarily have like great storylines. I think most people that would probably be really hardcore Superman fans would probably also be really big Justice League fans.
DC Universe fans.
Yeah, DC Universe fans, and would see this as another step. What I'm saying is, I think there are a lot more people who are just Batman fans.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt.
Then there are people who are just Superman fans.
In a way, now, like I said, being the Batman fan I am, I've always dreamed of seeing a Batman-Superman film, whether it be World's Finest, Batman versus Superman, whatever you want to call it, Superman, Batman.
Batman and his pal, Superman.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. I've always dreamed of this movie, but there was a part of me that wanted to see, because I think David S. Goyer's initial outline before the studio wanted to do this was going to be, how does having Superman exist as a United States citizen dictate foreign policy? And I thought that was a fascinating lens. It may be a very Christopher Nolan type lens, but a fascinating one at that, to kind of view a Superman movie through, and it brings Lex Luthor into the equation perfectly. I just hope, and that was Goyer's initial plan as screenwriter, and he and Zack Snyder had talked about that. I hope this is they're going to make the best Superman Batman movie possible, rather than Warner's wanting this, make it, and they had this kind of idea in their head of where they wanted the story to naturally go following Man of Steel. You see my point,
I see your point.
So, but I know, hey, it's Batman, so they can do whatever they want as long as they put Batman in there. That's the way most people's going to react. People are going to pay to go see Batman movies.
We'll see. We'll see what, how this goes, and hopefully there's a lot of thought being put into it to eventually deliver DC movies to the screen based on characters other than Superman and Batman.
To where you can get audiences vested in that, the
Sure.
way they are in Iron Man, Captain America, because Marvel used to have this same problem. It used to be Spider-Man and Wolverine.
Yeah.
And that was it. The
Spider-Man
and X-Men. Yes.
You could sell a movie on that.
And those were the first two big superhero movie franchises that kind of ushered in this era that we are still in.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, Warner Brothers has not been able to get over that hump the same way that Marvel has.
And I think Marvel, for the most part, their movies always have the same tone to them.
Yes.
Not all. I mean, obviously you have films like Punisher and Blade that are different.
But the mainstream
The mainstream Marvel movies typically have a very, very similar tone to them. And I think DC's just really trying to find what tone, is there one tone that works for everybody? Is there going to be one tone that works for their whole universe?
And to me, I think if you're asking a fan, what is that tone? And somebody who reviews and watches a ton of movies and reads a ton of comics, I think it's somewhere in between the Christopher Nolan Batman movies and what Marvel does. I think it's somewhere in the middle. If they can find that happy medium of allowing things that are fantastical to happen, but at the same time having real world consequences vested into their stories, I think that's when they will take this huge step. Because guess what, people? Batman and Superman are bigger than Iron Man and Captain America. They just are bigger. They're better characters overall. As much as I love Iron Man and Cap, and I prefer
I don't know if
those
Superman's
guys.
a better character than Iron Man, but
Well, you say that now, but would you have said that 10 years ago? No.
maybe.
Maybe you would, because you have a built-in bias against Superman. But
I liked the movie though, but
I'm just saying that nobody cared who those characters were before Robert Downey Jr. started quipping out one-liners.
yeah.
And that's true. Those comics start... Well, I won't say that's true. I think in the comics when...
I think Demon in a Bottle was always revered as a really good comic.
Yes, but he was never... Now Iron Man comics sell on the level of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And that was not the case in the 90s. Or the 80s.
But there's
or
plenty
the
of really
70s,
good characters
or the
that just aren't super popular. They're still really strong characters.
Yes, and
You can put their recognizability of Superman and Batman. You know,
they may not be much to that portrayal of the characters.
Once
what
again,
you're saying.
I know we're about to wrap this up to move into our Wolverine discussion. I want to see a DC universe, whether that's done as a Justice League movie or as Batman. This, to me, is where I could see the tonal shift between the Batman movies that Nolan did and the type of Batman movies that I think would need to take place for a Justice League movie to make sense and to get a different kind of Batman that I really want. I want a Batman universe, and I'm not just saying this... I'm saying this as a Batman fan. I want a Batman universe where you can have Batman call in Batgirl, or Robin, or Nightwing, or Huntress, or some other member of the Bat family.
You're wanting them to develop the Batman universe. They gotta develop the Justice League DC
let me
universe first.
What I'm saying is, to me, that would be that type of universe. They don't need to do that, but it needs to feel like it would make sense. There's no part of the Nolan movie where Batman would be like, I'm going to have to call in somebody. That would have made sense.
Well, John Blake.
Well, but that was done as very much as a transition. He met him. It wasn't just, I'm going to call him in, and he shows up.
Catwoman.
But he doesn't just call her in randomly. They built the character.
Which is good. You don't want to see character building. You just want to see the character be there.
I want to see character building, but Marvel's movies can have Hawkeye suddenly show up in Thor, and you're like, oh, there's Hawkeye. And it feels like it makes sense. They don't have to develop and do this whole story of, here's a young boy who, learned archery and, do some kind of whole thing, or, you have to do a whole Selena Kyle thing where she's a cat burglar and, build up the character to the point.
I see your point. I like both approaches to it, but I see you're wanting the more kind of.
You'd have to get to that point.
Feel.
Exactly. I want if you do another Batman movie, unless Christopher Nolan's, obviously if years pass, they certainly. But unless Christopher Nolan says, oh my gosh, I've got the best idea ever for, The Dark Knight Rises Again, or something like that. I want a Batman film that feels very comic book inspired. That doesn't feel like it has to be, grounded in a real world, drama logic.
You want a medium between the Burton films and the Nolan films.
Yes. I want something where you can have Clayface show up right next to Two-Face or the Riddler, and you're not sitting there thinking, wait a minute, how's this even possible? You're just, oh, this is interesting and really cool. There are some Batman comics you read, and those characters...
No, that's what Christopher Nolan will be thinking when he's watching the movie. How is this even possible?
Who knows? But, some of the best Batman comics, like Hush. Hush is a great Batman story.
One of the
and
best
you can just
ever.
have great characters show up and enjoy their interaction with Batman. And I think there's a couple things about that I want to talk about in regards to the Wolverine.
Okay, well, on that note, let's get into our featured review of the week, which is kind of the long-awaited Wolverine's Journey to Japan and James Mangold's The Wolverine.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Where were you?
Oh, Gene, I'm so sorry. I'll never hurt you or anyone ever again.
It's too late.
No!
You can't hide.
No, Gene!
I've been trying to find the Wolverine for over a year.
It's not who I am anymore.
Okay, that was from the trailer of The Wolverine, which hit theaters this past Friday, July 26th. Jerry, I guess I'll sit this one up since I wrote the review for it. I'm kind of the more Marvel fanboy of the two of us. Basically, what we have here is Fox's second attempt at a standalone Wolverine film after the failure that was Wolverine Origins. At least in my opinion. You're going to hear later that Jerry actually didn't hate that film. However, not only is this the first standalone Wolverine movie since that, this is also seen at least and announced by Mark Miller, who wrote Kick-Ass and created that character and has wrote tons of Marvel comics, as has been hired as the czar to kind of build this Fox Marvel cinematic universe with characters like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. This is kind of the start, at least he said, of that. So, you know, there's a lot riding on this movie, and the Wolverine's been at a very interesting place and points in its development. At one point, Darren Aronofsky was going to attach to direct this film, and a lot of people were hyped about that. There was even a rumor of an R-rated Wolverine film.
I was going to comment on that.
James Mangold announced that they're going to do a bloodier, unrated version that they are going to release on Blu-ray. So that's good. But this was not that kind of Darren Aronofsky R-rated Wolverine film that fanboys dreamed of. But it was an interesting look at Wolverine's time in Japan. And I say time in Japan and not time spent because the movie takes a unique look. Rather than kind of go back and see Wolverine's early dealings in Japan, which we see that in the film very well, and we're going to talk about that. This film deals with his return trip to Japan and things that fall out of that.
Although this movie implies, well, between this movie and Origins, there are 3 implied trips to Japan.
3 implied, okay.
But we'll talk about that.
Okay, exactly. So basically, the film starts out in Nagasaki, Jerry. I thought this was one of the best opening scenes I'd seen in a superhero film in a while, in a long time. I mean, it's not up there with the opening of any of the Nolan Batman movies, as we Nolan worship further on this podcast. But being a fan of history, and I love the Pacific theater of the war because it's so ignored and the European theater is so glorified. But it was just a great, the bomb had hit in Hiroshima. I guess they were getting word about it. And then Nagasaki, it happens. Yeah. And this is where Wolverine encounters, I can't remember the character's name.
Machida? I think Mr.
Machida.
Yeah.
He encounters Mr. Machida. And our journey starts from there. So, Jerry, what'd you think? What'd you think about the opening scene? Did you dig it?
I dug it. It was a really good way to I think it was a great way to introduce Wolverine. It explained his powers a little bit. I mean, it showed the claws. It showed his
bone claws.
Yeah, it showed his age. It showed his ability to heal. Because you're watching it saying, wait a minute, this takes place during World War II. It shows a little bit of his nature that, I mean, even though he's rough and has no qualms about killing somebody, he kind of sees what this guy's doing this Japanese soldier's letting prisoners go when he knows there's a bombing raid coming. And it shows that, Wolverine has some compassion. I mean, he has his own moral compass. And I think the scene nicely showed that. How did Wolverine know the plane was coming and going to drop the atomic bomb? I don't know. Maybe he was privy to some top secret information because he was part of a...
It seems like they had gotten word that the bomb had been dropped on Hiroshima.
Yeah.
Right?
Perhaps that was it.
Because they were yelling, Hiroshima,
yeah.
Hiroshima.
So
they knew that something similar was about to go down at their location.
Yeah.
So I think they had some prior knowledge of kind of the A-bomb being dropped. But it was definitely a good setup for this film, and it, right from the get-go, it kind of established a tone of this film that, hey, this is something completely different from any of the X-Men movies we had seen, and definitely completely different from Wolverine Origins, which had a terrible opening montage, which I was laughing in the theater as it showed he and Sabretooth fighting through the Civil War and World War II.
I liked that. I thought that was really cool.
I liked it because it was bad. I thought it was cool. I thought it was an interesting concept. I just thought it looked terribly cheesy
I don't
and
remember
cheap.
all of it looking that bad.
And basically, from that point, we find Logan, I believe he's in Canada again, his home. And we are, interestingly enough, Jerry, we get our first look at Wolverine post the events of X-Men The Last Stand, which, spoilers for X-Men The Last Stand, where he has killed Jean Grey, and he has seen Famke Janssen as Jean Grey in his dreams, and his just longing and just missing her, and he pronounces his love for her several times. Jerry, I thought it was a nice touch to have Famke Janssen's cameo in this.
Gave a lot of connection to the past movie. And it's Yoshida, not Machida.
Okay,
I was wrong
Mr. Yoshida.
Yes,
all right,
I looked it up.
Apologies.
Yoshida.
It's Mr. Yoshida. But just to have Jean Grey, so it really, like you said, ties it back to the previous X-Men film. So we see Wolverine, he has a run-in with some hunters, classic Wolverine stuff at a bar. And I'll mention the classic stuff. Jerry, they got the character spot on. Not that it hasn't been done before, and Bryan Singer obviously got him spot on in the first two movies. But I mean, he had so many great one-liners, so many, the roughness and toughness of Wolverine was there, but also the compassion that he has built up was established since that he has built from X-Men 1 to X2 to X3.
Yeah.
And they hit on that.
Hugh Jackman is certainly one of those, definitely is in that small group of actors that have
become the character.
Yeah, become the character. I mean,
with Robert Downey Jr.
as Iron Man. I mean, Adam West, does anybody ever not think of him as I guess maybe a lot of people don't think of Batman.
I think Batman people think Kevin Conroy, or at least they hear him.
I will argue his voice is just ubiquitous with Batman. That's
Absolutely.
True. So maybe him, but I do agree. Anytime you think of Iron Man, I think most people probably think of Robert Downey Jr. And anytime we think of Patrick Stewart and Professor X, I mean that's definitely one of those. I can't say that every time I read Magneto in any comic that I think of Ian McKellen. I think he does a great job, but I don't know that I connect him in the same way that I do with Hugh Jackman and
I think
Wolverine.
Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, that's just a different level. Because think about it, we've spent 5 movies seeing him as Wolverine and 4 movies seeing Tony Stark as Iron Man.
Technically 6 movies if you count his cameo in First Class.
That's true. Very touche.
Yeah.
So we
pulling it over on the Marvel fanboy.
Exactly. I know that appearance, which was one of the best Wolverine one-liners of all time, and he has some good ones in this one.
He does.
So basically, an associate of Mr. Yoshida shows up at the bar, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing plot by plot point, but it does need to be set up so we can get to talking about our opinion on the story. He said, she lets him know that Mr. Yoshida, the man he saved at the beginning of the film, is dying, and he would like, to say goodbye. And basically when he gets there and meets Mr. Yoshida, you realize that he wants to give Logan his humanity in exchange for maybe somehow absorbing his healing factor. He knows he's about to die, things of that nature. And then basically, I don't think it's not a spoiler. It's fairly implied that this man is dying. Yeah. And to really get into the story, I will say he does die. And, early on, very early on in the film. And he's
being ravaged by cancer.
Yes, and he leaves his fortune to not his son, who lives and breathes the company.
But his granddaughter.
But his granddaughter, exactly, who he obviously sees a lot of himself. And you got the Wolverine page pulled up, Jerry. What's his granddaughter's name in the film?
The granddaughter's name in the film is Mariko Yoshida.
Okay, Mariko. So
played by Tao Okamoto.
Okay, so Mariko inherits this. And so basically what unfolds here is we have this kind of corporate scandal kind of thing going on with people not wanting her to inherit this company and this fortune and basically be the most powerful person in Japan.
Yeah.
And Jerry, I wrote this in my review. What the first 2/3 of this film felt like to me, it was like, okay, you know what Wolverine's about. You know he's going to drop some cool one-liners. You know he's going to slice and dice a little blood here and there. He's going to drink some beer, smoke a cigar, right?
He doesn't smoke a cigar in this movie at all, though.
Oh, yes, he doesn't. However, this felt like a new creative team coming onto a Wolverine comic and saying, we're going to give you a different look at this character. Instead of, every Wolverine trope known in the book, we're not going to give you that. Instead, we're going to give you how does Wolverine, how does he really feel about his lack of humanity? And I think that is the central theme of the film deep down, is and I think that's tied in so well with the death of Jean Grey.
And when you say humanity,
3.
I mean, I really almost think it's his lack of mortality, that he's not able to, that he's loved so many people and watched them die either through tragedy or simply just the passing of time.
Yeah, lack of mortality is a better way to put it. But, exactly, just dealing with not being able to die. And that is just, and how we all think, oh my gosh, I'd love to live forever and never die, because every human fears death, but would you really? And this film is kind of some deep stuff, and it really was not what I was expecting in a Wolverine film. But, Jerry, you like that kind of central theme, but what did you think about this kind of whole corporate thriller they set up here?
I thought one of the things that was interesting about this movie was that it's not an origin story.
No, which is good, because we had that.
It's not an origin. It's not your typical, let's get a ton of superheroes and save the world. It's very much inserting the character just into a general story. It feels like this could have been, and I don't say this in a negative way, it feels like, and obviously this was very much based on one of the storylines from...
that stuff was it was by Chris Claremont.
Was it not part of Frank Miller's run?
I think they both did it. It was Claremont and Frank Miller, and it was stuff dealing with the Silver Samurai who shows up here.
But it felt like, once again, just like a run of a really good comic story. Not an origin, not a major crossover, just a really good personal story. That it set it against a background, having it in Japan, having it be kind of a corporate thriller, was a very different environment than we're accustomed to seeing Wolverine in. And so it let us see different aspects of the character.
And I think, to further get into how this corporate thriller unfolds, let's go ahead and roll the reel forward to spoilers. Alright, spoilers for the Wolverine starting now. So, Jerry, we find out that her father, Yoshida's father, Mariko's father, has actually hired somebody to have her killed. And it is the Viper. who is basically a different, earlier incarnation of Madame Mask?
I think what it is that her father has used her fiance, who was a high-level police officer, to have the Yakuza try to kill her.
Yeah, well, he was orchestrating the plot to put a hit on his daughter.
But I think that Viper was hired by the grandfather to get what he wanted from Wolverine, and both of those plots end up weaving together.
And exactly, and I will say it was the first 2/3 of this film feel so much different from the ending. I think so many things kind of intersect and overlapped. I was kind of like, wait, what's going on here? And I usually don't have too much of a time following a plot of a superhero film, despite what some people may think. But yeah, exactly. So we but see, we didn't, for so much of the film, you don't realize this until the big reveal at the end. Mm-hmm. Because we don't know that Viper's working for the Elder Yoshida.
Right.
Because we don't know he is alive. Which, spoiler and shock, he is alive as the giant CGI Silver Samurai, who is still trying to get Wolverine's healing factor and heal himself.
Sucking it out through the mirror.
Which apparently he can do through this new Silver Samurai suit.
I wish I could remember who wrote this. It was somebody's comment, and I mean, I really like this movie, but somebody summarized the movie to make it really silly about, this movie is about an old Japanese man trying to suck the marrow out of Wolverine's bones. It just made it sound really silly.
And the Russian actress that played Viper, she was pretty good. But I thought, as I was watching this unfold, you're like, wait, he hired the Viper and her fiance, who was basically, I hate to say this, but he's the Japanese Hawkeye, pretty much. He shoots arrows throughout the whole film.
Her fiance is not that guy. Her fiance was the police officer. The guy that she loved as a young man was the guy that shot the arrows.
Oh, yeah, the fiance, yeah, exactly what you're saying. That's who she loved as a young person.
She liked, Noboru Mori was the Minister of Justice, was her fiance.
Who was just a jerk.
Kinoicho or Kinuchio Harada? So I'm really butchering a lot of these names.
I'm butchering the plot because I thought it fell apart in the third act of the film.
It got harder to tell. There was a lot going on.
There was so much going on in the third act of this film, which I think it really fell flat and fell on its face in the third act, because the first 2/3 of it, you have this great kind of character portrait and, scratching beneath the surface of the Wolverine character. Just something so different than what we have seen Wolverine in. At least the best Wolverine story since X2. And then all of a sudden it's like, this person's double-crossing that person's double-crossing that person, and we end up in a giant lab where Wolverine has to fight a giant CGI robot version of the Silver Samurai. And I'm sitting here thinking, and as I'm trying to, so this person double-crossed that person, whatever. As I'm trying to dissect this, as I'm sitting there watching the film, and then I was like, not only does it become a mess on the plot level at the end, it's not a mess. Everything is explained and work within the context of the movie. It's just a lot going on in a very short period of time.
And it doesn't necessarily... It doesn't necessarily prepare you for this type of movie to
because it's completely
be ready to
different.
Putting all of these things together.
Exactly, and then it's like you put all these plot points together in your head for the ending of the movie, and basically what it boils down to is we see a stereotypical final fight in this lab superhero film, which I guess it was maybe kind of a surprise that Mr. Yoshida was in the Silver Samurai suit,
because we think we see him die and have his funeral much earlier in the movie.
It's just that there was no, as cool as that shock was, there was no payoff for it, because you spent the 15 minutes before that happened trying to piece together the jumbled plot. And it really felt like two different movies. And it really upset me. And because I really wanted to give this movie a grade or a grade and a half. And I ended up giving it a good and a half in my review, which sitting here thinking about it, maybe I should deduct that down to a good, and I might before it posts. But, I mean, Jerry, do you agree that it did kind of have a different feel in the third act?
I thought just a lot happened in a short period of time, and it was not as overtly as explained as it possibly could have been. I don't need them like hammering it over, it over
like a 90s comic book.
Yeah, telling us over and over again. But a little more
Maybe
time,
I do at this point.
A little time to digest plot information is never a bad thing.
No.
That if you have a reveal of a character hires a character to kill somebody, give that a couple minutes. Maybe if some of these plot elements had been woven into the film much earlier, if we knew that there was a silver samurai suit or something being created, or all this adamantium had been stockpiled, had been more of a plot point earlier on, then it may have helped out quite a bit.
Because it was basically, big reveal, action, action, action. Big reveal, action, action, action. There was no time for decompression or digestion of these twists and turns in the third act.
The first 2/3 of the movie I thought moved really well. I mean, really good pacing, and was just really different. And there were some fantastic scenes in this movie. There's a fight on top of a train.
Yes.
Of a bullet train that was just really good. I mean,
just the speeds alone made it cool.
Yeah, the way that you saw people fly back, and I mean, obviously Wolverine's like holding onto the train with his claws. That was pretty impressive. One of the major plot points of the movie is that something is injected into Wolverine. It ends up being a small creature of some kind, like a
bug,
like a biomechanical, or a mechanical creature. It's not like an animal, but it's
very similar to something that's used on Fallen Skies. If anybody watches that show.
It comes into his body early in the movie, and we don't quite realize it at first, but he starts losing some of his powers. He loses the ability to heal properly.
He still is stronger than an average human.
He's stronger, but he's wearing out.
He's getting tired.
It's a parasite of some kind, and my wife and I were discussing it, and we were trying to figure out what it was actually doing. Our thought was it was directly attacking his heart, because in the movie he realizes it's attached to his heart. That was directly attacking his heart so much that his heart was constantly having to fight this, for healing, and thus could not generate, healing for the rest of his body.
But it made for one of the best scenes of the film whenever there's a fight scene going on in the background. And Wolverine's trying to use this advanced machine, X-ray machine, I guess.
Yeah, it was what they were using to watch the robots, because those same little robots
were in Mr.
Yoshida that he was using to try to fight off the cancer cells.
Exactly, and as Wolverine's trying to dig into his body with his finger, that was a cool scene.
Oh my gosh, using his claws to cut himself open.
It reminded me of the scene in Prometheus when she got into
I was going to say, it reminded me of Prometheus when she has to pull the...
It wasn't as good as that scene.
But it was pretty good.
It was still pretty good, nonetheless.
It was one of those great scenes, kind of like in Total Recall when Arnold Schwarzenegger has to stick the probe up his nose and pull out that big tracking device.
Yeah.
Man, I love that kind of stuff. It's creepy, but it's crazy.
Gross,
yeah.
But it's fun to watch on screen if you
definitely
don't have a weak stomach. But
this is so off topic. There is a book series that's called... There's two of them, but the author is Scott Sigler, and the first one is called... I think the first one's called Infected, and it's about these aliens that, these alien parasites that come to Earth, and they infect people, and it sounds silly, but it's a really good, gruesome book. And so they start making these, like, triangles appear. The aliens are triangular shaped, But they start appearing on different parts of people's body. And when they eventually hatch, I mean, they're messing with people's minds and stuff, but when they eventually hatch, they kill the person. And so this guy's like locked in his apartment and decides he has to get these out. And one of these aliens is attached to his testicles.
Ugh.
And they have these like claws and stuff. And he uses a pair of chicken scissors, like big kitchen scissors, to detach this thing. And if you want to read a book that will just truly make you squirm, read Infected by Scott Sigler.
Alright, moving back to Wolverine. Let's talk about the Viper. I can't pronounce her name. It was a Russian actress played her. Pretty good strong female villain. Not going down with any of the best here, but I think she held her own in this film. I'm not saying this was a transcending performance.
Yeah, I thought she was a weaker part of the movie. I would have liked somebody that, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of one of those where I have a hard time putting a finger on what I didn't like about the performance.
It was that mole, wasn't it? Right above her lip. Is that it?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. I don't think it was that. Svetlana Kodchenkova was the actress as Viper.
She's Viper, and Jerry whispers and he's like, is that
Madam Mask?
Yeah, Madam Mask. Is it Madam Hydra? Not Madam Mask.
Is
Madam
it Madam
Hydra? There's a Madam Mask too, but she's Madam Hydra.
Gotcha,
so I was like, I don't think that's Madam Hydra because that's mainly an Avengers villain. I'm pretty sure Marvel Studios owns those rights.
Because I'm looking, I mean, she's in green robes and she's got green eyeshadow at one point.
But after a little research when I got home, Viper is the earlier incarnation of Madam Hydra, who really dealt with the X-Men as a villain more primarily. So it's one of those situations where that the Viper, even though it's essentially the same person, the Viper character is owned by Fox and the Madam Hydra character is owned by Marvel Studios. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. And so that was interesting to have that dynamic going on in the movie. But I mean, overall, if we're just judging the Wolverine, I'd probably say good and a half. Jerry, is that about where you're at?
That would be. I mean, this 2/3 of it was fantastic. Just near the end, I'm not going to say it unraveled, but
I thought it unraveled.
I thought it lost some steam along the way.
The thing that the first 2/3 was so well done that it makes up for this unraveling in the third act.
It was really a different movie than I was expecting.
Yeah.
I like Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay.
I have a lot of problems with the movie. I do not like the way that they
butchered
Gambit. They didn't butcher Gambit, but they definitely they neutered Gambit, but they butchered Deadpool.
Yes.
Absolutely. There's some really weird continuity issues that this movie brought up.
We don't have time to even get into all that.
Right. But I enjoy watching the movie. I mean, I think it's an entertaining movie.
The opening scene's pretty good.
It's not a great movie, but it is an entertaining movie that has plenty of Wolverine. It's got some great fight scenes. It's got some good character moments for Wolverine. I liked Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a mixture of really, really good and really poorly done. And,
whereas this is great most of the movie, it falls apart
with a fatal flaw. So just near the end of it's kind of that, and I think we're probably repeating myself, but I notice this often happens in video games. In video game plot developments.
Video games have plots?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You haven't played video games in a while, Brad. I know Gina and I have talked about this, probably talking about Bioshock Infinite a little bit. But video games, I mean, some of the video game stories are as fantastic as any other medium. But a lot of times, so much plot stuff happens in the last few minutes that you don't have time for it to all register. And so plot elements need to be sprinkled throughout.
And digested.
It's kind of like when you're making, you're making a dish that has something mixed in it.
What's up with you and food analogies?
I don't know. I'm kind of
today?
hungry.
I'm hungry.
It'd be like if you're making a pizza,
No,
Brad.
not a pizza. Go to a dish. All right.
All right, let's make a dish. You're making a quiche or something.
Lasagna.
Okay, no, it doesn't work with lasagna.
Okay.
You're making a quiche or something, or souffle, and maybe it has like some bacon or mushrooms in it, and it'd be like if you put just a couple in like one half of the pan, a couple pieces of mushroom or sausage or bacon, and then the other half you just completely hammered. I mean, you poured like a whole thing of sausage in there. It's not even. You want to spread those things out.
This is one of the most uneven movies I've seen in a while.
So in terms of the plot elements were not sprinkled evenly.
You say good? Good and a half?
Yeah, I would say good and a half.
I think I'm gonna edit my review and go to good.
I'm giving it once again, I always see the half as a swing. So I'm giving it a good. I mean, good to me is like, it was a good movie. I did not enjoy the movie. I did not regret seeing it at all. And I'm giving it the half swing because I thought the first 2/3 was really, really good. And, I mean, Hugh Jackman is just always interesting to watch as Wolverine. I liked him. I liked the sidekick character, what's her name? Not the granddaughter, but the other one who was like kind of the assassin.
Yeah, the redhead.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm rating the first 2/3, I'm thinking great and a half, maybe even epic. The ending, probably crap and a half. So, and then it kind of all meshes together for a good for me.
Okay.
But let's move on to something that was confirmed epic. And that is probably one of the best post-credit stingers since Nick Fury showed up. It's not maybe as shocking as that, no, but it is so well done. So basically, 2 years later after the events of this film, Wolverine's showing back up somewhere in the United States. And we see the advertisements on the TV for Trask Industries, promising a better tomorrow, which we all know Trask Industries created the Sentinels, and they're going to play a big plot point in Bryan Singer's X-Men Days of Future Past, out next summer, May 23rd, 2014. And so I'm thinking, Wolverine's just going to see, Trask Industries on the screen. It's going to go off, right? All of a sudden, all of the metal begins shaking. And then you look back, and obviously Wolverine's thinking Magneto. And last time we saw Magneto at the end of Last Stand, he was weak. He was in a weekend. But you saw the chess piece move. He turns around to give him the old classic, claws to the face. And Magneto, obviously, like he always does, stops him because Wolverine's body's full of adamantium. And he's like, there's something bigger going on here, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what he says. He's like, what are you doing? And it was see Ian McKellen back as Magneto on the screen. And as if that wasn't enough, all of a sudden everything freezes in the background. All of a sudden it's Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier, Professor X, who the post-credit scene at the end of Last Stand showed that he had transferred his consciousness somewhere.
Yeah.
But we were to believe that the Phoenix, Jean Grey, killed him at her home in X-Men The Last Stand. And what was it he said to him, Jerry? He's like, how are you alive? And what was Patrick Stewart's response? I can't remember the exact. He was like, it was something to do with, you're not the only one who can escape death, or something similar.
Yeah, it was definitely something like that.
And then it goes off. I mean, the perfect setup for X-Men Days of Future Past, which has the potential to be the definitive X-Men movie.
I'm going to say last thing with this movie. Apparently the original cut of this film was 2 hours and 35 minutes, so it was a lot longer than the movie that we saw was.
Which was 2 hours and 6 minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good 25.
Which, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to do a director's cut. A lot of the stuff they had to cut out was content-based.
So let's hope let's hope, though, that there is some element of this that sort of gives more time at the end.
More complete movie.
Yeah, to give more time for those plot points at the end to digest.
But back to the stinger, Jerry.
Yeah, back to the stinger. I'm excited. I don't have much more to say. I mean, I'm really excited. I mean, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are definitely in a class of their own in terms of portraying superhero characters, and have brought such depth to the characters of Charles Xavier and
it's going to be so fascinating to see them interact with younger versions of themselves. And not only that, it's Michael Fassbender, and oh my gosh, the name escapes me, the guy that plays Professor X. Look it up, Jerry. He's in Wanted. I know.
James
McAvoy.
James McAvoy. Yeah, James McAvoy.
It's James McAvoy, who he's in Wanted too. He's Wesley in Wanted. But
and Mr. Tumnus in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
And just First Class was such oh my God, here's these characters, how they got their start. And it was just Matthew Vaughn did an incredible job. And when you hear he leaves the film, you're like, oh my God. And then you hear Bryan Singer's taking over. I think he's finally going to get to, Brett Ratner took a crap on Bryan Singer's first 2 X-Men movies. It wasn't bad. It was just a completely different movie than what I think Bryan Singer would have made at the time he left to make Superman Returns. But
so Brett Ratner took a crap on X-Men in the same way that Bryan Singer took a crap on the Christopher Reeve Superman movies.
Yeah, I just think
at least the first 2.
I don't think Superman Returns was as complete a failure as Jerry does. I just think it didn't do enough on its own. It was just
a D minus.
It was a love letter to like the Richard Donner films, is what it was. But it was
like one of those love letters that had like pieces of hair and stuff in it and saliva that was kind of creepy that.
I know you hate Superman Returns, but
hey, I love Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor.
I mean, Bryan Singer made Usual Suspects, so he's always got to be respected for that, right? And as much as I hated Jack the Giant Slayer, I do think Singer is one of the best directors in Hollywood. And
he directed Trick or Treat, which is a great horror movie anthology. One of my favorites.
I think who better else to juggle this time travel, all of this giant, super-sized ensemble, epic-sized cast next summer. And I do think it will be kind of one of the more unique superhero movies that we're going to see in a while. I think it's going to be something to behold to see all those characters and to see Wolverine back in the fold with those characters. And it's going to be, I just can't wait. I can't just say how psyched I am. I just want to say in closing, and I wrote this in my review, that we've had Wolverine Origins, and this more applies to Wolverine Origins than it does this film. But I think Fox is, they're going to keep making Wolverine movies, and Hugh Jackman probably will, because everybody's getting paychecks, right?
Sure.
People are going to the theater to see these movies. However, maybe it's time to focus on other X-Men characters. Like I think they are. The X-Force movie was announced at San Diego Comic-Con, directed by Jeff Waldo, who's directing Kick-Ass 2, so we'll see how that movie plays out. But I think instead of just focusing so much on Wolverine and trying to do kind of this definitive Wolverine standalone movie, maybe it's time to quit trying that. I'm not saying don't explore the character, but I really think the definitive Wolverine movie's been done. It's X2. I mean, that is Wolverine Origins, X-Men 2. In my eyes. Now, does it mostly take place in the present? Yes, but it's everything that made Logan Weapon X and everything coming back to in the play. And I mean, X-Men 2. I think it's the third best. I think it's the third best superhero movie of all time. I believe, in my opinion, it's Dark Knight, Spider-Man 2, X2, even above Begins and Dark Knight Rises. As much as I love those 2 movies, I do think it's a darn near perfect superhero movie.
I think if the Shaquille O'Neal vehicle Steel isn't on your list of the best superhero movies, then you're probably
Blank Man.
You're probably in good shape. So,
yeah. So I'm so excited for Days of Future Past, but I think that's gonna about wrap this review up. Jerry, is there anything else you want to say about the Wolverine? Anything? All right.
Not much else. No.
I think we pretty much covered it, and what we didn't cover will hopefully be covered in the review. So
can I say one other thing? This is very brief.
Go ahead.
Hugh Jackman has become Wolverine so much that one of the things my wife and I were talking about was that with any other character, people would go crazy if they never wore their traditional outfit.
Yeah.
You know, imagine.
Well, you can't have, and they comment on this. He's like, "Would you rather I wear yellow spandex?"
Exactly.
No, Cyclops says that to
exactly.
Wolverine in the first.
And Wolverine has become so recognizable out of costume, with no distinctive costume whatsoever. You just recognize it's Wolverine. Throughout this whole movie, he never wears an X-Men suit. And he still is just so Wolverine. So, which definitely shows the power of having a character that has strong character, not always based on that's not just based on an outfit or uniform.
Yeah, definitely. He is a strong character, and he's still one of Marvel's 3 most popular characters. It's Spider-Man, him, and Iron Man. Iron Man's in that discussion now. All right, so I think that's just about going to wrap this edition of the Confirmed Epic podcast up. You can always find Breaking Epic News Daily on our Facebook page. Just search TH Epic Review, as well as on our Twitter. Just search twitter.com/TH Epic Review. Jerry Reed, where can we find more of your stuff this week?
Obviously, I'm putting up lots of reviews on the epicreview.com. That's www.thepicreview.com. And you can also check out pictures on my Flickr account, www.flickr.com/photos/barbecue17.
As for me, you can find all my stuff at thepicreview.com, as well as on Twitter at the Real Brad Bell, REEL Brad Bell. And I'll say until next time we are out, there's going to be probably some changes with the schedule. You guys noticed the delay we've in between the Man of Steel podcast and the Wolverine podcast. Just so much going on, but we are definitely going to try to get a podcast out to you at the very least once a month. So,
and hopefully you're seeing more content popping up on the Facebook page and on the site every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely on the site.
Pretty confident. This last week, we had at least 4 things a day pop up on the site.
So just keep checking back there. We appreciate the support. We appreciate you guys coming back. Go on there, comment, get more people to like us on Facebook, because the more stuff that you guys read and click on, the more stuff we can do. So we greatly appreciate the support, and just seeing this grow from just nothing, a blogger page, to an actual site that has at least a semi-following has been just a ton of fun, and we hope it can only get bigger and better from here. I definitely hope that the baby's due for Jerry. Jerry's about to have a daughter, Allie, coming up here in August. I would like to review Elysium. Well, we'll review them. I'd like to do a podcast for Elysium and Kick-Ass 2, but we're definitely trying to do a podcast for at least one of those films. So, just keep checking the Twitter and Facebook and TH Epic Review for updates. And until next time, we are out.